Content warning. The content of this podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or psychological advice. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any professional organizations. If you or someone you know is experiencing mental health issues or a crisis, please seek help from a qualified mental health professional or contact a crisis support service by dialing 988. Always consult with the licensed therapist or counselor for personalized support and guidance.
Welcome to Queer in Here, Let's Talk Mental Health, and I'm Alicia Nolan. My pronouns are she, her, 3-time Amazon bestselling author and owner of Choose to Live. This podcast is dedicated to LGBTQ+ mental wellness. A diverse selection of mental health professionals and passionate storytellers will come together to create a safe and supportive space for everyone. Each episode features insightful conversations that explore the unique challenges faced by the LGBTQ+ community, weaving in personal narratives that resonate deeply with experiences of identity, acceptance, and resilience. This podcast will not only provide valuable tools for coping and healing, but it will also foster a sense of belonging, reminding followers that they are not alone in their journeys, and intends to inspire hope, spark dialogue, and promote mental wellness for everyone.
Hi, Bryan, and welcome. Thank you for being here. And would you mind starting us off with a little introduction for the followers?
Absolutely. My name is Bryan Stanton. My pronouns are they, them. I identify unilaterally as queer, whether it be gender or sexuality. That is my umbrella term. And I am an educator, and I am the chair and host of Teaching While Queer, which is a nonprofit organization that came out of a podcast based off of my experiences as a queer educator in the South. So I've got a lot going on. On my day job, I work in theater education at a university, doing all the behind the scenes stuff, the cool, sets, lights, sound, costume, all that cool stuff. And then in the evenings, I transform into a superhero who advocates for the rise of queer educators everywhere.
Where are you in the South?
I am no longer in the South. So as a part of my story, I ended up moving out of the South, which I am now in New York City, but I was in San Antonio, Texas for 5 years. A little over 5 years. And that experience was, I refer to it as I did 5 years in Texas, like a prison sentence. That's generally how I introduce that conversation.
That's so sad, but it makes sense all at the same time. We're going to get into a little bit of that story, because that kind of ties into everything, right? One, I want to share with you how much I appreciate you being an educator. My late wife, who passed away in August of 22, she taught second grade for a little over a decade. I got to hear a lot of what happened in the background and the things that she had to endure. I want to say, even though she was a great teacher, she was very passionate about it. She also worked at a Title I school, so had like a lot of behavior things that she had to deal with instead of teach throughout her days, and then was also a second grade teacher when COVID happened, which was a whole different experience.
Yep.
Yes. So I appreciate.
Like she was a real superhero.
Yeah, she absolutely was, because I don't know how she did it. And I did 13 years in the Army, and I still probably I couldn't be a teacher. I'm not going to lie. So thank you for being an educator, because I just have such an immense appreciation for it.
All right, thank you. I wish that everybody did.
I hear that. Definitely undervalued and underappreciated. I try to back up my teacher friends, because I have a lot of teacher friends now that I still hear stories and everything. And I back them up whenever I can when people get nasty, because it's not nice.
No, it is not.
So can you talk a little bit about bullying or anti-queer discrimination that you have experienced within that realm?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting for me, because a lot of things come to you in hindsight, because in the moment, I think you're just dealing with shit. So like, I didn't notice microaggressions until after the fact, when I realized that it was like a pattern. When I moved to Texas, I made the decision to leave theme park entertainment, which had been my career for like a decade, and decided to go into the classroom because that was something I had always wanted to do. I thought I was going to be a history teacher because I love history, but it turns out that theater was how I was going to make money, despite every person in my life ever telling me that it was not going to be how I
Of course, yeah.
So I got a theater credential and was immediately hired into a theater teacher position for the next school year after getting my credential. Within a month of being an educator in Texas, I was pulled into the principal's office because a student had complained that I was discriminating against heterosexual white men. And here was the justification. I only teach gay things because we read one play out of 6. One of the plays had a lesbian kiss in it.
Uh-huh.
And so that was gay things and only gay things, despite there being 5 other plays that we read. He also didn't appreciate the fact that they had these cute kind of derogatory names for each other in the jock circle. And I said, absolutely not. Not in my space. We are not going to make fun of each other in derogatory ways. And so clearly I was discriminating against them. And the principal was like, this isn't a huge deal on the surface of things, but it is a very conservative neighborhood. And the community is really, they believe they have a lot of power to get people out. They'll start voicing their opinions and whatnot. So maybe just don't tell your students about your identity. And I was like, well, I'm a parent and my children go here. And I can't force them to lie about who their parents are. So no, respectfully, no. There is no closet for me and people will just have to deal with it. And for a while it was fine, though I figured out later that subconsciously I had started to separate my family from my personality at school. Like all of my students still, like they knew my children, they actually knew them because it was a small school, but I just stopped talking about them subconsciously. And then later on, I had some other experiences where I was putting on like a musical, and it was Carrie the musical. It's based off of the Stephen King novel. So immediately people were protesting to the superintendent that we needed to cancel the musical because, you know, in the opening scene of Carrie, a movie from the 1980s, there's a bunch of girls naked in a locker room. Obviously, as a queer person, I was going to put a bunch of naked girls in a locker room on stage.
Oh my God.
And repeatedly after that, I was questioned about whether or not I was going to include explicitly sexual content. And the educators that were there before me were all cisgender white Christians. There was one female and then there were 2 males. And the male that was there right before me literally had kids smoking or faking smoking joints on stage and doing all the stuff that I would never do it.
Yeah.
But because I was a queer person, I was constantly questioned about things that had to deal with drugs and sexuality because obviously my morals were incorrect. The irony of a lot of the situation is that the principal, his secretary, another teacher, and the athletic director all got fired around the same time because there were a series of affairs happening on school property. And they were all cisgender, white, straight, Christian people, but I was the problem. Even coming out of this controversy, I was the problem. So new principals came in, and when we did that production of Carrie the Musical, I had actually partnered with a nonprofit organization to raise awareness about cyberbullying because the script of the show is updated to include cyberbullying of Carrie White. And there was an organization that started because the kids at my school were cyberbullying a boy. He moved to another school and he ended up killing himself. His parents created an organization to basically help legislate cyberbullying and making it punishable with actual consequences because it wasn't really a thing at the time. And this is only 2018, so it's not like it's that long ago. And so now in some states in the South, this legislation exists, and it's because of this nonprofit organization. And we raised $1,500 for them through the sale of merchandise, and we did talkbacks about where you find resources about cyberbullying and how to report it and what it looks like and all of that stuff, raising awareness. And so I called it philanthropic theater. I started teaching about it to other theater educators. On top of that, I was working with students with disabilities in one of my classes, and I basically created a program where those students were able to create theater on their own. Like I directed them like I was a director, and they were partnered with a buddy, and they would put on their own plays. We would find a play that they were interested in. We would read it. They would tell me if we were going to do it. We put it up on stage, and I would hook assisted communication devices to the sound system so that students who were non-speaking could use their communication device to find the button that spoke their lines, and we would program their lines into the buttons so that they continued to practice using their communication device, but they did it in a way that allowed them to contribute to the play. I had other students where they had partners who would memorize their lines and whisper the line into their ear, and then they would have to project it out to the audience. And by the end of 4 years working with those students, some of those students started memorizing their lines. And it was a really cool experience. And it was literally one of my favorite things. And because I was doing all this work that was bringing a lot of good press, despite my morals being brought into question every turn of the way, bringing in all this good press for the school, I ended up being nominated by the teachers on staff to be the teacher of the year for my school. At that point, you fill out I won. And at that point, you fill out an application to be the district teacher of the year, because there's this whole competition to get to the state level teacher of the year. I filled out the application. I wrote every question to the application as if it was a scene from a play. And I ended up becoming the teacher of the year for the school district, and then also being honored by the local university as an excellence in education honoree. Yeah. And then there's an organization called Texas Thespians where they honored me as a trailblazer for the work that I did in philanthropy and inclusion and all this stuff. All these good things were happening. And they announced the district teacher of the year in like February, March, and then you finish out that school year, and then the next school year up until, February, March, you're the district teacher of the year. When that school year ended, we were getting into a school board election. And my husband and I, during 2020, had actually moved our family from about 40 minutes away to like inside the community where I taught, because all of our kids went to the schools there, and the commute was getting kind of ridiculous. We had gotten into a car accident almost like a week into like lockdown, just because we wanted to go pick up some pizza.
Yeah.
And the car accident was like the tipping point of like, we don't want to do this crap anymore. So we moved closer. And we were in the neighborhood, and it was 2022, and people were still holding outside events, despite the fact that Texas was like a free-for-all when it came to COVID policy. And one of my neighbors was walking by and heard one of the people say that, I'm going to work my hardest to get that faggot out of our schools. And I was the faggot because I had put a spotlight on me by being the teacher of the year. I kind of brushed it off and was like, I'll deal with that if it comes to light. The school year started. The state of offered a training on how you handle pronouns and gender affirming care for transgender students. They offered said training. Teachers took it, started the year off with procedures for asking for pronouns. And immediately after day one, principals started getting phone calls about pronouns and how we shouldn't be asking and we shouldn't be using them because stupid people don't understand, the parts of a word and the human or the English language. But that's neither here nor there. I had my principal come in before class started, the second day of school, and basically tell me, who is at the time, I had just started using the umbrella term queer. I was using he, they pronouns, and was basically told, you're doing pronouns wrong. One of the stories that it told in a speech to the entire school district at the start of the school year was how someone had outed me when I was 13. Right before going into high school, like 3 days before my birthday and 2 days before my freshman year of high school, someone outed me. And how the most impactful thing that happened in that time, the thing I remember most, was the one teacher who pulled me aside and said, how are you doing? And I relate it back to, with everything going on right now, not to mention the fact that recent survey data from our own students said that they believe their teachers don't care about them, that we just need to care for the students. Yeah. We need to love our students. She came into my classroom, guns a-blazing, to tell me I was doing pronouns wrong. Told me that her 17-year-old cisgender, presumably son, thought it was weird that he had to tell people he was a boy in multiple classes. And I said, that's strange. Imagine how a trans person feels. And then told me I am running the risk of outing students because I'm asking them their pronouns. And I said, no. And I was furious, and I asked her to, please leave my classroom. That day, my students didn't get the same teacher that my first day students got. I walked immediately across the hall to my work wife, who is still one of my best friends and actually comes to New York to visit me. And she basically just held me for a bit while I cried, and then the next day brought sage into my classroom so that we could try to neutralize I don't know if there's enough sage. I don't know that there's enough, but we tried to neutralize the space and just cleanse it.
That's a good friend right there. I'm just saying.
Honestly, the person who's going to walk in the next day with a bundle of sage. It was just a lot. Then that afternoon, we received an email from each of the department leadership, basically with an article that was by like a neuroscientist whose focus was on animals, saying how like she was a biologist and a neuroscientist that was focused on animals, saying how it could be detrimental to ask for pronouns because you could be inadvertently outing students and all this stuff. And I was like, you sent us an article from someone who doesn't actually study this. So I wrote a letter to my principal. She was very angry that I wrote a letter basically explaining my frustration. I said that like I was going to give myself time to respond, but after receiving the email last night or yesterday afternoon, I felt like time was of the essence to say something about this. You sent us an article with someone who's ill-equipped to talk about this subject, and here are 3 articles. I printed them out and included them with my letter from universities actually studying this field and how we should handle communicating pronouns with students. Furthermore, the perspective of the person that you had provided the article about was concerned about the trans child. None of your concern when you were talking to me yesterday was about trans children. None of it was. It was you got a complaint from a cisgender child's parent and you didn't want to get any more complaints from a cisgender child's parent. So I took my frustration out on a letter. It made her very angry. That was the end of our relationship. And so we worked, well, cordially for the rest of the school year. And then I just immediately started looking for other jobs. And I left that school to kind of keep my kids away from the homophobia and for peace of mind. And then a year later, realized the toxic relationship I needed to get out of was Texas. Part of that comes from teaching while queer. I gave myself a year after all that stuff went down to find a place where I can talk about my story. And I couldn't find one. And so I started Teaching While Queer podcast as a way for queer educators to share their story. I came to New York City to present at a conference just outside of the city in 2003. I presented my findings about like, what is the reality of teaching while queer right now? And they were like, wow, this is so crazy because we've never experienced anything like that here. And I was like, well, sign me up. And I think my husband, who was with me, he was filming me for a grad school project. He and I both decided in our heads separately without talking that we were going to move here. And by the time we had left, had already started looking at like real estate. And realistically, that was March 23 and we moved in August 8th. So within 6 months, we were here.
Yeah. So from the time that you have moved there to things that are happening right now, has there been any kind of shift over the last, how long has it been? Month and a half, almost 2 months?
I think from my perspective, so now I teach at a university. I'm an administrator in the university because I'm the technical director for the Performing Arts Center. And then I also teach within the theater department. So I've got dual roles. But because I'm an administrator, I am privy to more information and also a Slack that has a lot of articles coming through it. Here are things that I notice about New York City compared to other spaces that I've been in. In the South, people are polite to your face. I deal with more direct, like people calling me a groomer, people calling me a faggot who don't know me here, but they're people I don't know and I don't care about. Right. So that part doesn't really bother me. What was bothering me in Texas was that people were nice to my face and then going after me behind my back and publicly saying things about me that were incredibly disparaging because all I was trying to do was take care of their children. Like I was really just trying to be there for their children. In the past month and a half or 7 years, however, how time is an anomaly. The things that I've noticed is that there really is a desire to pre-comply with everything, which is a problem that was experienced when Don't Say Gay was introduced in Florida and other states in the South. People would ask questions like, so does that mean this? And so does that mean I can't do this? So does that mean I can't do that? And then by asking those questions, the people in their leadership roles and their spaces would be like, yes, that means you can't do that. That means you can't do that. And you've given them permission to exclude those things by asking the question. The best advice I have for people right now is to sit down, shut up, and wait for someone to specifically tell you what you're supposed to do. And keep doing what you're doing until you're specifically and explicitly told not to. There's a lot happening right now, especially in the education field. That just 2 days ago from when this was recorded, was announcement that, half of the Department of Education is potentially being fired this week. And that's going to have an extensive impact on everybody. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most, is that the queer and trans community, specifically the trans and queer community, because the trans community is getting this target first, but it's all inclusive. And for any LGB who thinks otherwise, get your head out of your ass.
Thank you for that.
It's all inclusive.
Yep.
We are all lumped together, whether or not you voted for him, whether or not you paid donations to him, whether or not you own a company, whether or not you're on his, there's a queer person that's in his cabinet. That's great. That person will get fucked over eventually.
Yeah.
That's, pardon my language.
Nope. Go for it. I love it. It's passion. That's all that is.
Yes. But the best advice that I can give everybody is to just wait. Lawsuits are happening, and it's not a matter of trusting the judicial system, because I understand we can't. But in the interim, we can wait until someone tells us otherwise, and we can reconvene. Fine. They have a problem with DEI. Do the same shit. Stop calling it DEI. Do the same shit and don't mention affinity space. Do the same shit. Don't talk about inclusion. Do the same shit until someone tells you to stop.
Yeah. Which is kind of happening. People are starting to catch on to that.
Yes,
we can talk about these. Yeah. It's we can talk about these things. We can call it something else. Yeah. It's when I worked with partners overseas in the military, there are obviously certain things that we can't talk to our partners about, but there are ways to guide them in that direction, right? Without explicitly using the same language.
Absolutely.
It's very, very much the same thing. Yeah. There's so much happening. And then the education department taking a hit right now. I know a friend of my girlfriend was actually just let go in the Department of Education after 21 years.
Yeah, and there's no consideration about that too. Also, for all the people who voted, I hope that none of you are listening to this, but if you happen to be, what the fuck? Because here's the thing. You seem to not care about other people's jobs. I've literally had conversations with people where they're it's great that they're going to be getting rid of all this spending and whatnot. Literally, those are human beings and their jobs. And they're what about all the waste? What about the people that are just collecting paychecks? And I'm how do you know that that's even happening?
Yeah.
You know what? Who is at your job going, what did you do today? Diet.
Yeah.
I need you to write down every single thing that you did today to justify your paycheck. No, you show up, and on some days you just collect a paycheck, and on other days you work your ass off. And it's a balancing act. And the thing is that the government should work for us. And what's real frustrating to me right now is that I'm literally paying taxes to be omitted from the government. I am paying taxes so that they can deny my existence. I am paying taxes so that they can tell me that I don't have my rights and I shouldn't have rights. So why am I paying taxes?
Yeah.
Because I'm supposed to have representation because of those taxes. That was the whole shtick, right? No taxation without representation. And here we are, where we have political parties that behave as though they don't represent the entire constituency. And it goes both ways. Also, if there are Democratic leaders listening, get off your ass. A pink suit and a little sign is not a protest. Look at what people are doing in the streets and do that. I think my favorite moment this week was that there is somebody running for mayor who is considered a socialist party in New York City. And he literally is getting in a verbal confrontation with one of Trump's cabinet members over detaining people in New York City.
Yeah.
And I'm this is the energy we need. We need verbal confrontation. We need people actually saying stuff to their faces, not in a press conference outside the building. They're never going to watch that video.
They don't care.
You need to get in their face. We need more Al Green, and we need less the 10 people who censored him. The 10 Democrats who joined into it.
A lot of the frustration right now, I've been saying it for a month, having conversations with people why isn't anybody doing anything? And my girlfriend today, she showed me a video of Senator Chris Murphy, who built a 6-week timeline of all of the things that Elon, I hate saying their names, those two have done illegally in a 6-week time frame to
that's the thing
his
that
peers.
I need people to realize is it's illegal. What is happening is illegal. That's why there are court cases. And
Yes.
now, like today, maybe yesterday, because I don't keep up with the insane writings of a madman. Like I don't scroll it consistently. But I saw something today that was like, I'm making a memo about how all of these lawsuits are illegal. So you're doing illegal things, and now you're claiming that people suing you over the illegal things is illegal. No, people, wake up. Wake up and realize that there are laws in place and there are checks and balances for a reason, and we need to use that system until we can't. And then we burn the whole thing down and come up anew.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, again, been the most frustrating thing, right? It's like they're doing all of these illegal behaviors and they're pretending like they're not doing anything illegal, telling everybody else that what they're doing is illegal. Like it, and people are believing it.
It's gaslighting bullshit.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And some of us
completely narcissistic and like,
yeah, it's wild. Like that we're watching
sociopathic.
Yes, we're watching our president act like a toddler, and he absolutely,
including taking nappies in meetings.
Yeah, yes, he's a big old toddler, and people are eating it up. My favorite videos right now to watch are the ones where, you know, the maggots are being interviewed, and they say like the most ridiculous things because they have no idea what they're talking about, and then they just look dumb.
Just saying those checkpoints. It's bullet points that showed up on Fox News.
Yes.
Or Truth Media. I found some bullet points and I memorized them, but I don't know anything about what they say. My favorite thing is all the people who are like, this is not what I voted for. This is exactly what you voted for, and I don't know what you're complaining about. Like, this is what you wanted. Yes.
Warned you. They wrote it out, their playbook, 2 years ago. Like, we knew it was coming, no matter how much you wanted to turn your head and say, oh no, well, they said that they know nothing about Project 2025.
That's the part. I heard that so many times from people in my family, from folks that I know who were like, no, he says he doesn't know anything about Project 2025. And I'm like, literally, the man is a liar. Like, documented. I don't know why you're still choosing to believe him.
Yeah. It's a scary time. While saying all of that, it's a frustrating time. It's a scary time. And of course, they're doing all of this all on purpose. They're doing everything. Like every day, I have to do new breathing exercises because something else is either said or a change is made or a threat is made every single day. And they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it on purpose. Because it is right now, it is difficult to organize against the unknown when something new is happening on a daily basis. People are confused. Most people are missing things that are happening on a daily basis because it's coming at us so often. And then you have people that want to turn their head, and you have people like me who feels obligated to be in the know. You know, like I don't want to miss anything. I want to know exactly what's happening right now, which is also affecting my mental health all at the same time, right? I'm
in that camp right there. I feel like I'm obligated to be in the know. I feel like because I have created a nonprofit and a podcast that I need to be a beacon for people, and it's exhausting. And so, like, for me, the best advice I can give anybody is that it's okay to put the phone down. You know, it is okay to put the phone down and just go enjoy something else. Leave it upstairs, leave it in your bedroom, and go do something else.
Yeah.
Because you need those mental health breaks in order to have stamina, because this is a long battle. And I'm going to be blunt, as a person who loves history. This battle has been raging since before the Civil War. And we are just now seeing it come to head in a different way.
Yeah. Yes, it is going to be a long battle. It is a long battle already, and it's been less than 2 months, but it feels like forever, right? And my fear again right now is like, how do you prep? Because I feel like this country is going to be set on fire like any moment, because those people who voted for him at some point are going to be directly affected, because everything that he's done and said he would do hasn't affected a lot of his supporters, and they didn't think it would. Yeah. Yet. So what's going to happen when those people are also affected? I feel like things are just going to start burning down. And I hate to be one of those people that, you know, because I always hope for the best, right? I try to hope for the best. I really do. I try so hard.
Hope is important. So
yes,
keep trying, like, keep doing it.
I'm going to keep holding on to hoping for the best. But at the same time, in the back of my like brain, you know, like my realistic, you know, logical part of me is like, things are just going to get worse all at the same time.
It's
And
going to
how
get
do you
worse, and then eventually it will get better.
eventually, yes, again, I'm hopeful, right? I'm hopeful. Okay, so let's go back a little bit to, okay, so you moved to New York and you started your podcast. What was we kind of already know what your inspiration was to start the podcast, right? So what are the kinds of things that you are bringing to your teachers, the conversations, in terms of like how they can still be their authentic selves right now as a queer teacher?
So there's a few things that I think about.
Hmm.
And the first is that there was a lot, and there still is a lot of conversation that centers around queer people and queer educators, specifically where we are not a part of the conversation. We're just talked about on the media. People are calling us groomers. People are calling us pedophiles. All these conversations happen about us. You know, despite the fact that daily I see a new mugshot of a youth pastor that has molested children.
Not a drag queen.
Not a drag queen, not a queer educator. But there was one of the things that I wanted to be clear about is that we will never be silenced. I'm even working right now on a written anthology just in case someone tries to take my podcast, just in case someone tries to say that we can't have that available anymore. I'm working on a written anthology that's like, great, here are all these stories, and they're still there, and they're never going anywhere.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
We are not going anywhere. And so that's part of it. The other aspect of things when it comes to authenticity in the classroom is that being on your authentic self is a lot of things. And let me be clear, it is US history that has made sexuality the number one identity factor. And that was created and perpetuated by Puritan Christians. So fight back against that by just being yourself and say, I'm a father, I'm a singer, I'm an actor, I'm a designer, I do all of these things, and all of these things encompass who I am, and also I'm queer. Or don't even say the queer part, but be like, yes, queen, when you feel like being like, yes, queen. You don't have to be explicit with how you say things or how you approach things to be your authentic self. Authenticity is about your actions, not your words.
Yeah, thank you. Because I mean, obviously that's something that educators are struggling with, is just being their authentic self. But you're right, you don't have to come out and say, I'm gay. You can still be yourself without having to say it out loud, and be true to yourself and who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know we're running out of time. One thing that I like to ask all of my guests is if there is one little nugget of advice that you could give, whether it is the queer community in general or your fellow queer educators or everybody across the world right now, what would that be?
So the best bit of advice I can give you is something that I'm actually repeating from someone who commented on something on my TikTok. I had created a series of posts that were, Black joy is resistance, queer joy is resistance, trans joy is resistance, a bunch of fists in the air, joy is resistance. And one of the people who commented said something that I had never heard this perspective before, and I really appreciate it. It's, don't just weather the storm, learn to dance in the rain. And I love the visual of it because I do like dancing in the rain.
Right.
And I love that it's really not about accepting that this turbulence, I call it turbulent times, this turbulence that we're experiencing. And if you've been on a plane, turbulence is temporary. But just because we're experiencing turbulence doesn't mean that it has to be everything all the time. We need to be excited enough to stand up on that plane and act like we're surfing. We need to do what we can with the circumstances to find our moments of joy and then celebrate them loudly.
Yes. Yeah. It's those small wins that, the opposition really doesn't like, to be honest with you. They don't like it.
They want us silent and scared.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what, it might be scary, but I'm not scared. And I don't mean to say that from a privileged place. I mean, I am literally at a come at me, bro, kind of phase right now.
Yeah.
Like, bring the fight to me. I will fight right fucking back.
Yeah.
Let's do it. You want to see what it's like to get a bunch of drag queens and trans people and queer people together to fight you? Because we will kick your ass. You know why? Because we've been bullied by you our whole fucking life. So we have a lot of pent up rage at you. Yeah. You want to see what that looks like? You have no fucking idea the can of worms you are unleashing right now. Also, I'm a witch. Where are the witches? When are we casting? Because I am here for that also.
Let's do it. Oh my gosh. And I don't think they've considered the fact that they'd have to fight a bunch of drag queens.
Honestly,
they don't want to mess
with that.
Pissed
off drag queen? Have you ever seen a pissed off drag queen? Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Will you please tell everybody where they can follow you? I know I follow you now for sure, and I love your content. And can you please explain to people where they can follow you and also get in touch with you, your podcast and all that?
Yeah, I am most easily followable on Instagram. It is what I use the most personally and on the podcast. I am at Teaching While Queer for the podcast and at Prof, P-R-O-F, Bryan, B-R-Y-A-N, Stanton, S-T-A-N-T-O-N for my personal. Hit me up in the DMs. I'm always happy to talk to people. That is the best way to get a hold of me. And if you are a TikTok person, for now, quote unquote, then feel free to hit us up at the podcast at Teaching While Queer. And the same thing, I just got videos of me singing queer stuff on my TikTok. So if you like queer people singing queer stuff, then it's the same thing. Prof. Bryan Stanton.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you do, especially for educators. I know, again, I have a lot of educator friends and queer educator friends that need your energy, your passion, and just also knowing there are other queer educators out there that are ready to fight, if you will.
Yeah, join our online community or come on the podcast and share your story. I love talking to people.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. Please leave comments for Bryan or myself about this episode. You can follow Queer in Here on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Queer in Here Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are loved. You are enough. Please lean on each other and ask for help when needed. See you next time.